Hey everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from Hello Basque, and today I'm continuing our series of videos on Basque immigration throughout the world, and today we are talking about Basques in Australia. Now this topic really interests me because until a few years ago, I had no idea there were Basque people in Australia. But last year I had the pleasure of visiting Sydney and I got to go to the Gure Choco Escola Chea, their Basque club in Sydney, and I talked to the people there. The board of directors were really nice and they told us a little bit about the history of Basque immigration to Australia. But for this video, I've done some further research so I get all my facts straight. But again, disclaimer, I am just somebody who has read some things, I'm not a historian. But here's what I know of Basques in Australia. Now, in terms of the Basque diaspora, relatively, the number of Basque people who went to Australia is really small. Compared to Latin America, compared to the US, not a lot of Basque people went to Australia. So their numbers are pretty small, but there still are Basques out there and people of Basque descent in the land down under. The first recorded free settler in Australia from Spain was in 1821, a guy named De Arieta, which sounds pretty Basque to me, but of course records back then, even now, they don't classify Basque. It was either you were from Spain, France, that's it. But Mr. De Arieta had some land in 1821, 2,000 acres to be exact, in New South Wales. So we have a record there, but really immigration didn't start till after 1851. Gold was discovered in Victoria, so some Basque people came over in the years after looking for gold, much like they did with the gold rush in California. But the largest number of Basque people really didn't come over to Australia until after the Second World War, for many reasons. One, Australia's real far, so if Basques were going somewhere else, they usually ended up in the Americas first, or at all. But also the people who were allowed to settle in Australia for a long time was restricted to Irish and British nationals. So people from continental Europe were really excluded. But after the Second World War, there was a huge labor shortage in Australia in the sugarcane industry and tobacco industry. Basically, Australians didn't want to do these jobs, and even established immigrants within Australia didn't want to do these jobs either because it was hard physical labor. But people in Europe, they needed jobs, they needed work. Some people couldn't go back home, so they were looking for opportunities, and Australia took advantage of that. They had a really active recruitment after the Second World War in Europe, trying to recruit people to come work in the sugarcane fields, and Basques were down. A lot of Basque men wanted to go to the United States to do sheep herding, but there were quotas for that. There were annual limits on that, so the wait list to go to America could be very long. Whereas Australia was offering employment right here, right now. So Basques went over and worked in the sugarcane fields in Queensland, and once they made enough money, some people went back to the Basque country, but some stayed and they bought their own land and started their own operations, and that just continued the chain migration where they would send back to the Basque country for their relatives or neighbors, whoever. So quite a few Basques ended up harvesting sugarcane in Queensland. But that agricultural work, that's seasonal work. So 5 months out of the year, they were out of work. And so then Basques would migrate to the south of Australia, to New South Wales and Victoria to pick fruit. Or some Basques would move into the cities and find whatever work they could do there, working in restaurants, hospitals, cleaning, you name it. Basques were doing it. In the 1960s, the sugarcane industry started becoming mechanized, so they needed less people, and also things started improving a little bit economically in Europe. So kind of the flow of immigration from the Basque country really slowed down in the 1960s. But the Basques who were already in Australia, who wanted to stay, some of them stayed in this farming industry, but others moved into the cities and did other work there. So there were 3 Escola Chea or Basque clubs in Australia. Now there are only 2. But there was one in Melbourne, no longer. But there's still a Basque club in Townsville, Queensland, and in Sydney, as I mentioned. There are still Basques that keep in touch there. And even now there are some Basque people moving to Australia, but mostly the main immigration wave was working in sugarcane in Queensland at the end of the Second World War, specifically the 1950s. So that's a little bit about Basques in Australia. Comment, did you know there were Basques in Australia? And if you did, or if you're one of the Basques in Australia, leave us a comment and tell us what you know, your experience. I love learning from you guys. That's about it for Basques in Australia. As a side note, if you're watching this video the day it comes out in 2019, that this weekend in Bakersfield, California is the North American Basque Organization's convention at the Kern County Basque Club. Basically, it's 3 days of eating, a lot of drinking. They're gonna have handball games, they're gonna have dance performances, a big celebration of Basque culture. I hope to see you guys there. I'm gonna be there with my family, so if you see me or my dad, Hella Basques Aita himself, definitely say hi. We love meeting you guys, and I look forward to seeing you. Also, Saturday night, I'm gonna be at Noriega's having dinner. I'm gonna eat all the fried chicken. Yeah, I know it's not Basque, but it is so good. So I hope to see you guys there. And for everybody else who can't come to the party, sorry. But you can subscribe to the Hella Basque YouTube channel, bringing you new videos about the Basque country and Basque culture every week. So, I mean, it's not as good as a party, but I do what I can to be entertaining. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next week.